Millionaire marries a stranger to save his family's fortune, but the contract turns into real love. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The rain fell in thin silver threads over downtown Seattle, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold. Inside a quiet corner cafe, Ethan Ward sat alone, his dark suit still damp from the storm. The clock above the counter ticked toward midnight, but he barely noticed. His father's lawyer's words echoed in his mind. "You have 30 days to marry or lose control of the Ward Group." His jaw tightened. The company his grandfather built, the legacy his father protected, everything was about to vanish because of one line in a will. Marriage. To a woman he did not even know. He took a slow breath, glancing at the untouched coffee in front of him. That was when the bell above the door chimed. A young woman stepped inside, shaking rain from her thin coat. Her hair was damp, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She looked out of place among the polished crowd, simple clothes, worn shoes, and tired eyes that spoke of long days and harder nights. Ethan recognized her immediately. Lena Carter, the stranger who had helped his mother earlier that morning when she collapsed outside a grocery store. No hesitation, no questions. Lena had called for help, paid for the cab, and disappeared before anyone could thank her. Now, she stood by the counter, rubbing her arms for warmth, completely unaware that fate had brought her back into his life. Ethan rose from his seat, straightening his jacket. His decision had already been made hours ago, the moment he realized every person in his world wanted something except her. He walked toward her slowly, his voice calm but deliberate. "Miss Carter," he said. She turned, startled. "Do you remember me? I am Ethan Ward. My mother wanted to thank you." Lena blinked, trying to recall. "Oh, your mother is all right, right? I am glad she is fine." "She is," he said. "Because of you." He paused, studying her closely. "Do you have a minute to sit down?" She hesitated, unsure. I really should be going. It is late and I still have work tomorrow." "I will make it worth your time," Ethan replied quietly. There was something in his tone steady, almost too calm, that made her follow him to the corner booth. The silence between them stretched. Outside, thunder rolled low over the bay. Ethan placed a folded document on the table, its edges still crisp, and met her eyes. "I need your help," he said simply. "I need to get married." Lena froze. "I am sorry, what?" "Married," he repeated. "It is not what it sounds like. Think of it as a contract. 1 year. You will be compensated well, and your life will change completely. In return, you help me keep my family's company from falling into the wrong hands." For a long moment, she could only stare at him, half expecting him to laugh. But Ethan's expression did not waver. The rain drummed harder against the windows, muffling the sounds of the city. "This is insane," she whispered. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," he said. "You helped my mother without asking for anything. That is more honesty than I have seen in years." Lena shook her head. "Why me? There must be someone." "There is no one else I can trust," Ethan interrupted, his voice low. "You would be doing me a favor, and in return, I can make sure you and your brother never have to worry about rent again." Her heart stumbled. "How do you—" "I do my research," he said softly. "You have been behind on payments for 3 months. The building owner plans to evict you next week." The mention of her brother's name, her only family, hit her like a slap. She pressed her lips together, unable to speak. Ethan leaned forward, his tone quiet but firm. "You have nothing to lose, Miss Carter, and everything to gain. Think of it as a business deal." The words hung heavy in the air. A business deal. Marriage as a transaction. The very thing she used to mock in late-night movies. Yet sitting across from this man, seeing the exhaustion behind his eyes, it felt strangely human. Her fingers brushed the edge of the contract. "What if someone finds out?" "No one will," he said. "We will keep it discreet. Appear together at 5 family events, act married in public, and after 1 year, you walk away free and wealthy." Lena's throat tightened. The storm outside had become a roar now, wind rattling the glass. Ethan's gaze remained steady, patient, almost pleading beneath the calm. Finally, she drew in a shaky breath. 1 year, she said quietly. That is all. Ethan nodded once. 1 year. He reached into his pocket and placed a simple silver ring on the table between them. The metal caught the cafe's dim light like a small flash of lightning. Lena stared at it, then at him. For a heartbeat, the world outside went silent. Only the sound of their breathing remained. And just like that, a deal was struck. A deal that would test the line between duty and love, between contract and choice. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single signature would change everything. The next morning, sunlight broke through the storm clouds, glinting off the glass towers of downtown Seattle. Inside his penthouse office, Ethan Ward stared at the city below, coffee cooling untouched in his hand. He had spent half the night replaying Lena's expression when she finally said yes. It had not been excitement or greed. It was quiet fear wrapped in reluctant hope. Now, the deal was set in motion. His lawyer had already drawn up the paperwork, his mother's relief was evident, and the clock toward his 30th birthday had stopped ticking quite so loudly. Yet, beneath the efficiency, Ethan felt something new, an unease he could not name. Across town, Lena sat at her small kitchen table. The contract spread before her like a foreign language. Her younger brother, Noah, wheeled himself closer, curiosity in his eyes. So, this man is just going to marry you? Like, for business? Lena forced a small smile. It is complicated. He needs to protect his family company. I just signed for 1 year. Noah frowned. That sounds like trouble. Maybe, she said softly. But it also means we can stay here. You can keep your therapy, and I can stop worrying about next month's rent. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed the final page. The pen tip scraped faintly against the paper, sealing a decision that felt both unreal and irreversible. That afternoon, a black car arrived outside their apartment. The driver greeted her with quiet politeness and handed her a sleek envelope containing an itinerary, fitting, schedule, press arrangement. Everything was handled. All she had to do was show up. When Lena entered Ethan's estate for the first time, she froze. The mansion overlooked Lake Washington, its white stone walls and glass balconies glowing under the sunday. The air smelled faintly of cedar and rain. Inside, marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, and soft classical music played from somewhere distant. Ethan met her at the entrance, composed as always in a charcoal suit. "Welcome home," he said, his tone smooth but careful. "Home," she repeated, the word tasting strange on her tongue. He gestured toward a staircase curving upward. "Your room is on the east wing. There are a few conditions in the contract we need to review before the ceremony tomorrow." She nodded, clutching the strap of her purse like a lifeline. In his study, he slid a smaller document toward her. Clause 1, he began evenly. "We keep our private lives separate." Clause 2, "We appear together at every public event related to my family." Clause 3, "We avoid any public scandal." Clause 4, "No personal involvement beyond the appearance of marriage." Lena looked up. "No personal involvement?" Ethan's eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "Exactly. This is business, Miss Carter. It must remain that way." She exhaled slowly, nodding even as her pulse quickened. The next day, the courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and rain-soaked coats. The ceremony was brief, no flowers, no music, only signatures and a quiet exchange of vows before a judge who had seen 100 loveless unions before. When the words, "You may kiss the bride," came, Ethan hesitated. Then, with practiced grace, he leaned forward and brushed his lips lightly against her cheek. Cameras clicked softly. To anyone watching, it looked perfect. To them, it felt like an echo of something they could not name. Afterward, as the driver pulled away from the courthouse, Lena looked out the window at the gray Seattle skyline. Her reflection in the glass looked like someone else entirely, a woman caught between two worlds. Ethan sat beside her silent. The distance between them was measured not in inches, but in trust. He glanced at her once, then turned to the rain-smeared city beyond. Neither spoke. Yet both knew the same truth. Whatever this was, it had just begun. The following morning, the sound of rain tapping against the balcony doors pulled Lena awake. For a moment she forgot where she was. The silk sheets, the faint scent of cedar, The view of Lake Washington glowing under a pale sunrise, it all felt like a dream she had wandered into by mistake. Then she saw the silver ring on her finger and remembered. Downstairs, the mansion stirred quietly. The staff moved with the silence of habit, setting breakfast on the long mahogany table. When Lena entered the dining room, every head turned for a second before returning to work. Ethan was already seated at the end, reading the morning reports. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up, polite but distant. "Good morning, Mrs. Ward." The words caught her off guard. "You do not have to call me that," she murmured. "It is what people will expect," he said simply, folding his newspaper. "We need to make this look real, Lena. Appearances matter." She nodded, sitting across from him. The breakfast spread looked like something from a hotel buffet: fresh berries, pastries, omelets, but her appetite was gone. She picked up her coffee, hands trembling slightly. After a pause, Ethan leaned back. "This afternoon, my assistant will walk you through your schedule. There is a charity gala in 2 days. It will be your first public appearance as my wife." Lena blinked. "That soon?" He nodded. "We cannot afford any doubts about this marriage. The board is watching everything." His tone was calm, businesslike, but something in his eyes betrayed the strain. He was used to control, yet beneath his composure was a quiet desperation. She could feel it. Later that day, his assistant Claire guided Lena through what felt like an etiquette boot camp. "You need to know which forks to use, when to speak, how to greet investors," Claire explained, her tone professional but not unkind. "Smile when you are introduced. Not too wide, not too shy, just enough for the cameras to see warmth." Lena tried her best, fumbling more than once. She curtsied when she should have shaken hands, said "pleased to meet you" to the same man twice, and almost tripped over the hem of her new gown. Claire only sighed. "Do not worry. Just remember, everyone loves sincerity more than perfection." That night, Ethan passed by the practice room, pausing in the doorway. Lena stood before a mirror, balancing on unfamiliar heels, rehearsing introductions under her breath. The sight made him smile faintly, something small, almost unnoticeable. When she finally caught his reflection in the mirror, she turned quickly. "I am trying not to embarrass you." He shook his head. "You will not." She hesitated, watching him. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" His answer came slowly. "More often than I admit." Their eyes met for a brief second before he looked away, breaking the moment. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be long." The next evening arrived faster than either expected. The gala lights glittered like gold across the ballroom. Music swelled, champagne glasses clinked, and photographers lined the entrance. As the car door opened, Lena felt her heart race. Ethan offered his arm. "Ready?" "No," she whispered, "but I will try." He smiled, just enough to steady her. Together they stepped into the flashing lights. Cameras flashed, and whispers followed. "That is Ethan Ward's new wife. She looks nervous. He finally married someone." Lena kept her chin high, every step rehearsed. Inside, she could feel Ethan's hands settle gently on her back as they moved through the crowd. To everyone watching, they were the perfect couple. But beneath the surface, they were two strangers, bound by a contract and a storm of unspoken truths. And yet, somewhere between the smiles and the spotlight, Ethan realized something unsettling when Lena looked up at him and smiled for the cameras. It did not look like an act. It looked heartbreakingly real. When the gala finally ended, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses still echoed in Lena's mind. The car ride back to the mansion was quiet, the kind of silence that felt full instead of empty. Ethan sat beside her, scrolling through messages on his phone. His face looked calm, but his fingers tapped restlessly against the screen. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said after a moment. "My uncle seemed impressed." Lena exhaled, relief softening her shoulders. "I thought I would forget how to breathe out there." "You did better than half the people in that room," Ethan replied. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "You looked confident." The word lingered in the air. She turned toward the window, hiding the warmth that rose to her cheeks. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the wet pavement, fading as they left downtown behind. When they arrived home, the staff had already turned down the lights. Only the soft glow of the fireplace filled the main hall. Ethan loosened his tie and poured 2 glasses of wine. "To surviving the first test," he said, handing her one. Lena laughed quietly, clinking her glass against his. Does this mean we passed? For now, he said, but there will be more. Family dinners, board meetings, press interviews. The illusion has to hold. Illusion, she repeated, staring at the fire. You make it sound like none of it is real. He hesitated before answering. It is not supposed to be. She looked up at him, her voice soft but steady. Maybe not, but sometimes pretending feels closer to real than the truth. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked, shadows shifting across the marble floor. Ethan studied her face, the quiet determination behind her words. She was not like anyone he had ever met in his world of contracts and cold handshakes. Later that night, Lena stood on the balcony outside her room. The wind carried the scent of rain and pine from the lake below. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the reflection of the moon on the water. Behind her, footsteps approached. Could not sleep? Ethan's voice was softer than she had ever heard it. She shook her head. Too much noise in my mind. He stepped beside her, hands in his pockets. It gets quieter with time. At least, that is what I tell myself. She glanced at him, half smiling. You do not seem like someone who believes his own advice. He chuckled quietly. You are right. His expression softened as he looked out at the lake. When my father passed, I thought I could fix everything by working harder. But some things do not bend to effort. Lena listened in silence, the honesty in his tone cutting through the polished composure she had seen before. You miss him, she said. Every day, Ethan admitted. He built everything I am trying not to lose. Without thinking, Lena reached out and touched his hand. You are not alone in this, Ethan. He turned toward her, eyes catching the faint glow of the moonlight. For the first time, the distance between them seemed to fade. The moment lasted only seconds before he cleared his throat and stepped back. You should get some rest, he said gently. Tomorrow we meet the board. She nodded, watching him walk away down the dim hallway. When he disappeared, she looked down at her hand, still warm where their fingers had brushed. Inside his study, Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the contract between them. The first clause, no personal involvement, felt heavier now. He picked up a pen, drew a single line through it, and set it aside. The storm outside began to rise again, wind rattling the windows, but he barely noticed. Somewhere deep inside, the walls he had spent years building were beginning to crack, and her voice was the one echo that could still reach through. The next morning came too quickly. The sun had not yet climbed above the lake when Ethan and Lena drove toward the ward group headquarters. The tall glass building reflected the gray sky, sharp and cold, a perfect mirror of the world Ethan ruled. Lena had barely spoken during the ride, her hands twisted together in her lap, her nerves showing in every small movement. Ethan noticed but said nothing until the car stopped. You do not have to be nervous, he said quietly. Just stay close to me and keep that same calm smile from the gala. I am not nervous, she said, even though her voice betrayed her. Just terrified. He gave a small laugh, the first of the day. That is normal. You know, Brady and Manning. Inside, the boardroom smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive cologne. 12 executives sat in perfect order, their eyes sharp, their smiles polite. At the head of the table, Ethan took his seat while Lena stood slightly behind him, trying to blend into the background. This is Mrs. Ward, Ethan introduced. My wife. The room filled with murmurs. Some nodded approvingly, others exchanged quick glances. One man, his uncle Richard, leaned back in his chair. So the rumors are true, he said. You married quickly. Very strategic. Ethan met his uncle's gaze without flinching. It was the right decision. Richard's smile thinned. For the company, I hope. It is the second. The rest of the meeting passed in stiff formality. Lena remained quiet, memorizing faces and names, feeling the weight of every curious glance. When it finally ended, she followed Ethan out into the hallway, her heart still pounding. They do not like me, she said under her breath. They do not like anyone who threatens their control, Ethan replied. You just gave them something to talk about. That night, another event awaited, a charity dinner hosted by the Ward Foundation. Dozens of journalists gathered at the entrance, cameras flashing as Ethan and Lena stepped from the car. Her gown shimmered under the lights, but her hands were cold. Remember, Ethan whispered, offering his arm. This is just another test. They entered the ballroom together, moving through the crowd of investors and socialites. The air smelled of perfume and champagne, As they greeted guests, Lena's smile never wavered, but the whispers followed her like shadows. "Who is she?" one woman murmured. "She looks so ordinary." "Ordinary does not last long in his world," another replied. Lena tried to ignore them, focusing on Ethan's voice as he introduced her to donors and clients. But when a reporter suddenly pushed forward, microphone raised, the noise stopped. "Mrs. Ward," he said loudly, "there are rumors your marriage is more of a business arrangement than a love story. Care to comment?" The room went still. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at Ethan, his jaw tightened, but he gave a subtle nod. She turned back to the reporter, her voice steady though her hands shook. "You are right," she said. "It did start as a business decision. But what I have learned is that loyalty and respect are just as powerful as love. And maybe, if you choose to honor those things, love finds you anyway." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then, someone began to clap. Another followed. Within seconds, the room filled with applause. Ethan's chest rose with quiet pride. Later in the car, he broke the silence first. "You handled that better than I ever could." Lena smiled faintly. "I told the truth." He looked at her, the city lights flickering across his face. "You did more than that. You made them believe in something again." As they drove across the bridge, Seattle shimmered below them, reflected in the dark water. Ethan's hand rested on the seat between them, close enough for her to feel its warmth. Neither spoke, but the air between them had changed. For the first time since the contract began, it did not feel like an act. It felt like the start of something real, fragile, uncertain, but real. That night, the rain returned, soft and rhythmic against the windows of the mansion. Lena sat in the living room, the faint crackle of the fireplace filling the silence. The events of the evening played over and over in her mind, the flashing cameras, the question, the way Ethan had looked at her afterward. She had not expected her words to matter so much, yet something had shifted. Ethan entered quietly, his tie gone, sleeves rolled up, a rare hint of exhaustion on his face. "You are still awake," he said, surprised. "I could not sleep," Lena admitted. "My mind keeps replaying everything. I thought I made things worse with that reporter." He shook his head. "You made things better. The board called after the dinner. Even they were impressed." Her lips parted slightly. "Really?" He nodded, leaning against the doorway. "They called you sincere. That is something money cannot buy." She smiled softly. "I did not say anything special." "You said what was real," he said, moving closer. "And in this world, real is rare." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The distance that once filled every room between them had thinned to something fragile, something almost tender. Ethan sat across from her, the firelight glinting in his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said quietly. "When you agreed to marry me, what were you thinking?" "Listen," Lena hesitated, searching for words. "I was thinking about my brother, about losing the only home we had left. I did not believe people like us get chances like this, so I took it. But I promised myself one thing." "What was that?" he asked. "That I would not let it turn me into someone I am not," she said. "I signed the contract, but I never agreed to lose myself in it." Ethan looked down at his hands. "Maybe I should have made that same promise." The fire crackled softly. She noticed the faint tremor in his fingers, the weariness behind his composure. "Ethan," she said gently, "you carry too much alone." He gave a faint, humorless laugh. "That is part of the job. In the cap. It does not have to be," she said. "You talk about your company as if it is your whole life, but people need more than purpose. They need peace." Her voice was soft, but her words struck deeper than she knew. Ethan leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You sound like my mother," he murmured. "I will take that as a compliment," Lena said with a small smile. He studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" she asked. "A contract," he said simply. "Not a person who makes me question everything I thought I understood." The air between them grew still. Outside, thunder rolled across the lake. For a heartbeat, the world felt smaller, just the two of them. Two strangers who were no longer strangers at all. Lena stood, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. "You should rest," she said, her tone soft but uncertain. Ethan rose as well. "Lena," he said, stopping her at the doorway. She turned. About the clause in the contract, he continued. The one that said no personal involvement. She waited. I crossed it out, he said simply. Her breath caught. For a second, she forgot how to speak. Why? Because it was a lie, he said. We are already breaking it. The words hung in the air, quiet and dangerous. Neither moved. Then Ethan smiled faintly, almost shyly. Good night, Lena. Another one de said, in a rod of hand to the one of the conscious. In his router and at be still by there. She watched him leave, her heart beating faster than it should. When the door closed, she pressed a hand over her chest, feeling the warmth that refused to fade. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the city clean. Inside, for the first time since their contract began, love had quietly found its way through the cracks. The following week began like any other, but a quiet tension lingered in the air. The story of the charity dinner had spread fast, appearing in every major business column. Some praised Ethan and Lena's sincerity. Others whispered that their marriage was a publicity stunt. The attention made the board uneasy, and Ethan knew it. By Thursday, the first cracks appeared. During a meeting at headquarters, his uncle Richard entered unannounced, holding a folder thick with documents. His smile was sharp, his tone colder than usual. Ethan, he began smoothly, it seems congratulations are in order. You have managed to charm the press with your little fairy tale. Unfortunately, not everyone believes it. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Meaning? Richard opened the folder and slid a few photos across the table. Meaning this. An anonymous source sent me these. They claim your marriage is nothing more than a contract, a business arrangement designed to secure your position. It is prided. The photos showed Lena entering Ethan's office weeks ago, a pen in her hand, a document on the table. To anyone else, it looked exactly like what Richard suggested. Ethan's jaw tightened. Where did you get these? That does not matter, Richard said smoothly. What matters is perception. The board has called for an emergency review of your leadership. If they confirm this marriage was fabricated, you could lose everything. Ethan rose from his chair. You orchestrated this, did you not? Richard's smirk widened. Prove it. He gathered the folder and turned toward the door. I warned you, nephew. Sentiment makes you weak. Ride from 7 and indescribe, and it notly haddle blanks of rhyme. When he left, Ethan stood in silence, anger and disbelief twisting inside him. He knew exactly what Richard wanted, the company, the legacy, the control, and now he had the perfect weapon, Lena. That evening, Ethan returned home later than usual. Lena was waiting in the study, sensing something was wrong the moment he walked in. Ethan, what happened? He set the folder on the desk. My uncle has been investigating us. Someone leaked photos of the contract signing. He plans to expose it. Her face went pale. Expose it? But that would ruin everything, your reputation, your company. And yours, he said. They will paint you as a gold digger who sold her name for a check. Into dacted me hap backed about her. Lena took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. What can we do? Nothing, he said bitterly. The board meets tomorrow. If they vote against me, I lose control of the company. The inheritance goes to him. Silence filled the room. Then Lena spoke softly. Then let them. Let him have it. Ethan turned sharply. You do not understand. This company is my father's legacy. And what about your mother? She asked. What about your peace? You are fighting ghosts, Ethan. Maybe this is not a battle you are meant to win. Her words hurt because they were true. He looked away, struggling to hold the anger that had nowhere to go. You do not know what it is like to lose everything you built. Is there any way tell you plays men on the rises? And Seb's uttered as follows. No, she said, stepping closer. But I know what it is like to lose yourself trying to save it. Before he could reply, the phone on the desk buzzed. It was a message from the board. Emergency hearing confirmed. 9 a.m. Ethan exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. If they destroy me tomorrow, you should leave before it happens. You do not owe me anything. Lena shook her head. I am not leaving. This is not your fight, he said. Maybe not, she replied. But I made a promise to stand beside you. A real one, not in the contract. Their eyes met, both filled with exhaustion and something deeper. Ethan's voice dropped, almost a whisper. If this all ends tomorrow, I need you to know something. I never meant for any of this to happen, but somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. Lena's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. The silence between them said enough. Outside, thunder rumbled over the lake once more, as if the world itself was warning them something was about to break. Morning light broke gray and cold over downtown Seattle. The city was already awake, traffic murmuring below the glass towers of Ward Group headquarters. Inside the boardroom, tension pressed against the walls like static. Every executive was present, including Richard Ward, whose smile carried the calm of a man certain of victory. Ethan entered without hesitation, wearing a dark suit and a look that was neither defeated nor defiant, just resolved. He had barely slept. Lena's words from the night before still echoed in his head. "You are fighting ghosts." She was right. But this morning was not about winning a company. It was about reclaiming his integrity. As he took his seat at the head of the table, the board's legal counsel cleared her throat. "Mr. Ward, these allegations are serious. Photos, documents, and statements suggest your marriage may have been arranged for personal and financial gain. Is there any truth to these claims?" Richard leaned forward slightly, pretending sympathy. "We just want honesty, Ethan. Transparency for the sake of the company." Ethan met his uncle's eyes. "Honesty," he repeated, his voice steady. "Then let us start there." He stood, placing a folder on the table. "Yes, this marriage began as a contract. I will not deny that. My father's will forced me into an impossible choice: marry or lose everything he built. But what began as duty became something else." The room murmured. Reporters outside the door pressed closer, cameras clicking faintly. Ethan continued, his voice clear. "The truth is, I fell in love with my wife. Not because of her name, her background, or what she could do for me, but because she reminded me of the values this company was founded on: honesty, compassion, and courage. If that costs me my position, then so be it." Richard laughed quietly. "So noble," he sneered. "But the board needs facts, not emotions." Ethan reached into the folder and slid a document forward. "Then here is a fact. I have transferred my shares of Ward Group to a charitable trust in my father's name, effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the room. Richard's smug expression vanished. "You cannot be serious," he hissed. "I am," Ethan replied calmly. "You wanted control? You can have it. But the company will now belong to the people. It was meant to serve the employees, the families, the city that supported it. No one here, including you, will ever profit from it again." Richard's face turned red. "You are destroying everything." "No," Ethan said quietly. "I am freeing it." At that moment, the doors opened. Lena stood there, dressed simply but poised, her eyes unwavering. Every head turned. "Mrs. Ward," someone whispered. She walked to Ethan's side, her voice steady. "He is telling the truth. This marriage began as a business deal, but it became real because he chose integrity over power." She looked directly at Richard. "You may own the company's name, but you will never own its legacy." The room fell silent. Richard, defeated, grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. He turned to the board. "I will resign effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity to serve." Without waiting for their response, he took Lena's hand and led her out of the room. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but neither looked back. Outside, rain had begun to fall again, washing the streets clean. Ethan stopped on the steps of the building, the same steps his father once stood on decades ago. Lena squeezed his hand. "You just gave away your entire fortune. In the 7 sauve out of repeal, and laid down, in like the same." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but for the first time it feels like mine." She looked at him with quiet awe. "What will we do now?" Ethan brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. "We start over. Together. No contracts. No conditions." For a long moment, they stood in the rain as the city moved around them. Somewhere behind them, the Ward name was being debated, recorded, dissected. But none of it mattered. The real story was already written in the choice he had made and the love that had survived it. A full year passed after that morning when Ethan walked away from the company that once defined his life. The headlines had faded, the noise had settled, and the city had moved on. What remained was something quieter, stronger, and real. The old mansion overlooking Lake Washington no longer belonged to the Ward name. Ethan had sold it months ago. Now, he and Lena lived in a modest craftsman house near the edge of the same lake. The walls were warm with sunlight and laughter, not silence and tension. The air smelled of coffee and fresh wood. On the front porch, flowers bloomed in mismatched pots, a detail Ethan once would have called imperfect, but now found beautiful. That morning, Lena sat by the window, writing thank you notes for the foundation they had built together. The Promise Project, an organization that helps struggling families keep their homes, just like the one she once fought to save. Across the room, Ethan brewed coffee, humming softly under his breath. "You have gotten good at that," she said, smiling as he poured her a cup. "I have had the best teacher," he replied. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "You mean Google?" He laughed, shaking his head. "I meant you." For a moment, everything felt perfectly ordinary, and that was what made it extraordinary. No contracts, no cameras, no expectations. Just two people who had learned how to build something real from the ruins of what used to be. Later that day, they attended the first anniversary event of the Promise Project. The small community hall buzzed with live families sharing stories, volunteers setting out food, children running between tables. Ethan stood near the stage, watching as a single mother took the microphone to thank the foundation for saving her home. Her voice trembled, but her gratitude filled the room. Lena slipped her hand into his. "This is what your father would have wanted," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "And this time, I am not protecting a legacy. I am continuing it." When the event ended, the crowd began to leave, the sound of laughter fading into the evening air. The sun dipped low, casting streaks of amber across the water outside. Ethan turned to Lena, his expression soft but certain. "There is one thing I have not done properly," he said. She tilted her head, curious. "What is that?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was the same simple silver ring that once sat between them on a cafe table long ago. Only this time, it gleamed brighter. Lena's breath caught. "Ethan," he took her hand gently. "The first time I gave you this ring, it was part of a deal. This time, it is a promise. No contracts, no signatures, just love." Tears welled in her eyes as he knelt on one knee. The hall had emptied, but the moment felt infinite. "Lena Carter," he said softly, "will you marry me for real this time?" Her answer came through a quiet laugh and a single word. "Yes." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. The silver caught the last light of the setting sun, glimmering like a symbol of everything they had survived. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of waves against the pier, the same rhythm that had followed them from the very beginning. Lena rested her head against his shoulder, whispering, "Funny how something that started as a lie became the truest thing in my life." He smiled, kissing her forehead. "Sometimes it takes a broken deal to find an honest heart. Not about ready woman and made of the time, not about or unforgettable." As the sky darkened, the lights of the community hall glowed behind them. They stood together by the water, no longer the millionaire and the stranger, but simply two souls who had found home in each other. And just like that, the contract that once bound them had turned into the promise that would keep them forever.